Okay. Yeah, and I don't know why I'm a little bit nervous about doing this, because I've recorded myself so many times making the DVD and then making the online course and just all sorts of other things. But this is a little, not gonna lie, this is a little bit nerve-wracking for me, but we'll go through it and see how this goes. So obviously, with all of you being here tonight, you all want to improve your recall, which, why wouldn't you? It's just the most important thing that we can teach our dogs to do. I want my dogs to have 100% recall. And that's my goal. And, I want to say that probably, well, with Grin, I do have it. Without question, I have 100%. With Kala, I probably had about 98, 99%, which is really good for a Doberman. Dobermans don't generally have, that desire to stay close, or, they are a completely different breed than the herding breeds that are so interested in, I want to say pleasing you, but it's really not that. I'm getting too technical, but Dobermans are ratters. They like to chase and kill vermin. So that's, what their DNA comes back from, the German Pinschers, and a few of the other breeds that are in a Doberman. So, I've always been very proud of my Doberman's recalls. She had the best one of all of them, but they were all really, really good. And I also had Greyhounds too, by the way, that, they always say don't ever let a Greyhound off the leash. All of my Greyhounds were off-leash reliable. All 4 of my Greyhounds were excellent at it. And so that can't be just luck. That has to have so much to do with relationship building and, figuring out what the process is to get the dog to that point. There's also a part of it, I think, that is play training. Play training is being involved with your dog, not always being like the one that's telling them what to do. I mean, we do need to be the one that's in charge of our dog, but it's also nice when they cooperate. And so cooperation comes, when it comes to a dog, comes from them seeing that you have a lot of value to you. And so it's not always about the food. Sometimes it's about just being fun to be around, and being willing to get a little silly at times. And sometimes being silly is what saves you in a situation. I forgot who it was that said something about when their dog, they try to make it fun or something like that. One of you said that, and that's really a big part of it. So the other thing is that these dogs are all different. Every single dog that you've had, I'm sure, you can attest that whether they're the same breed or they're not the same breed, they all are individuals, and so they're all going to have slightly different drives and different. I'm sure that some of you have either said or have heard someone say that you've had 2 or 3 dogs before and of the specific breed, and they've never been this difficult as the one you have now. Has anybody ever, said that or felt that before? So I want to say that Batman is my first Border Collie, and people think that when agility people get Border Collies, that they're going to have an easy road in terms of, being able to successfully do a course. But I have never worked so hard with my previous puppies as I'm working with this guy in agility. And it isn't about the obstacles. He's got that. He thinks he is ready for the nationals. But it's about the cooperation of, we're not doing this right now. Right now I want you to do this. And so I've got 2 agility trainers, spending an arm and a leg on my agility career with this dog already, and he's only 11 months old. But, these are the kinds of things that you just have to recognize, is there are differences. One of the big differences with Batman that I didn't have with my previous dogs is that I started with a puppy from the last several dogs, obviously not the Greyhounds and not the first Doberman. He was a rescue. But after that, I've gotten puppies each time I've gotten a dog, and I tell my clients this all the time: if you have a small puppy, they are more likely to follow you around when they're young, and then you get into adolescence, and all of a sudden they start giving you the dew claw, you know, instead of coming to you, they kind of give you the paw. And with Batman, the difference is that he's better now than he was when he was 10 weeks old, 12 weeks old, in terms of coming when called. So that's been an interesting change for me. And I was a little worried, honestly, because I like to hike up in the woods, and I was just thinking, oh my gosh, you know, is this going to be really the border collie is going to be the dog that I can't have off the leash in the woods? And what he would do is something would get his attention, and he would, you know, kind of follow it, not with his nose, but with his eyes. And food did not matter. I have roast beef here. And this does make him work. Tonight I was playing with him with it a little bit earlier, but in those situations he didn't even care. And it wasn't even that, it was just odd. It was like I wasn't even there. And so I was concerned. But I rode through it. Was like, you know what? I mean, I'm a dog trainer, for crying out loud. I can make this happen, and I just need to lower my expectations. And by lowering my expectations, keeping him on a leash for a couple of months up in the woods, which was not fun for me. But I now have gotten to the point where I can trust him up there. And I feel like I'm probably about 95% recall with him. I feel like he's oh my gosh, so much better. And he's an intact male, so it's not about like going and, you know, looking for females or anything. He's just in a different state of mind, and I'm very grateful for it. So just so you know, I mean, it's no matter whether I've had a ton of experience or I haven't, it's still, they're all individuals, and we have to sometimes lower expectations a little bit and accept where we are right now with our dogs. However, we do want to move forward. So I want to have a couple of you, and you're not being, your voice will be recorded if you speak, but you're not being recorded. But I just would like to get just a couple of examples of a dog not coming when called. So does anybody want to just, you know, just briefly, I don't know, give me I know the bear is one of them. We can talk about that one too, but yes, Bronin.
I have Bronin out in the yard. We take him out quite a bit without a leash and run him in the woods and in the backyard. And he comes back an awful lot of times with the treats in hand. I took him out one day and he would not. He didn't want to hear about those treats or anything. And
was he busy sniffing? Was he chasing something?
No, he was just out playing and having fun in the yard.
He was having fun.
Fighting at the snow and throwing it in the air, and he just wouldn't come through. And every time I would go to him, I have to admit to my voice elevated as it went on, of course, but even when he first wouldn't come back to me, it was a friendly, come on, Bronin, let's go. And he decided he wasn't ready yet.
Okay. All right. Another example. Yes.
Neighbors are out with their dog, and my dog's at the fence looking at him. Not barking, just looking.
Okay. So he won't come away from the fence.
Yeah, he
right.
wants to see what they're doing.
Okay. And then when you went to get him, did he run away from you at all, or?
He will do that sometimes, but with the
drag line?
I don't even look at him, I just walk to the line.
Perfect.
And that works. But if he does see me going to the line, he's got wise to it, so he'll start to kind of skitter away.
Yeah. Got to have a long enough line. Yeah.
Or it has to be positioned, like, you know, like sometimes it'll kind of curve.
Be behind him or something. Yeah. All right. Well, good. So at least that's a help, right? And then one more example of dog not coming when called. Something. Yes.
Well, I had Marty out in the yard, and we were just playing ball, and I didn't realize one of my neighbors was walking their dog, and he wouldn't come. He just took off and
Went into.
barking at him and turned right to the poor dog.
Right. And that's not a situation that you want to find yourself in for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So every time you have a behavior problem, which remember, it's not the dog to the dog, it's not a behavior problem, right? It's a behavior problem for us. The dog is fine. But when it's just a common term, whenever you have a behavior problem in your dog, the most important thing, and it's so basic, but the most important thing is you have to set it up so that you don't find yourself in those situations, okay? Because every single time, if we're talking about coming when called, every single time your dog does not come when called, he has learned or she has learned that I'm going to use the he pronoun. He's learned that he has that control, okay? And those are the kinds of learning, those are the kinds of things we don't want our dogs to learn, is that they have control in that situation. So we have to do a few things. We have to make sure that we're not allowing this to happen. And so we just briefly touched on the drag line. One of the common things, by the way, with a dog not coming when called is it happens in the owner's own yard. Frequently, people will have a dog that they can take off the leash in the woods or on hikes, and the dog is fine. But in their yard, we have some issues sometimes with, they get to know your schedule. They're pretty smart. They get to know that every day in the morning, you send them out one more time to go to the bathroom, but that you're going to be leaving or putting them in the crate, or something is going to happen that is not in their mind what they're hoping for, right? So we want to make sure that for now, if that's your dog, for now, you just take them out on a leash, right? It's not forever. Of course, we want our dogs to come when called no matter what. But right now, what we have to try to do is get ourselves on the right side of things and have that 100% recall, even if it means that some of those recalls that are happening in the way we want them to are happening because our dog is on a leash. And one of the things that people don't realize is just how much more you can use the leash other than just keeping your dog from leaving. You can use the leash to practice recalls. And we'll do demos of that next week with your dogs, or I'll talk about it, but we'll show you next week with that. You can, have the drag line so that when it is, if you want to send your dog out into the yard before you go to work and you don't want to have a leash, send them out on a long line, like I had suggested that that Henry's owner does, because that's a really good way to ensure that you have the most control in those situations. So with a drag line, you have an 8 or 10 foot line outdoors. If you're going to use it outdoors, you have an 8 or 10 foot line, and your dog is over there, but the end of the line is over here. And so when it's time to get your dog, you walk over to the line instead of walking at the dog. So if you have a dog that I call a little fresh pants, where you go to get them and they're like, haha, nope, you're not going to get me, that's also a way that kind of puts you out of control. But if when you do that, you're walking right at your dog, right? So you're going to get your dog and you're walking towards them, and they see you coming and you're looking right at them, because that's what we do as humans. We look our dogs right in the eyes. But if they have the drag line on, then you walk towards the end of the line, and you're no longer walking at your dog. You're no longer making that direct eye contact. You're looking for the end of the line. And then you just pick it up and you say to your dog, let's go, we're going in, let's go. Good job. And you can even reinforce your dog for just walking in the house with you. You act like they're doing it for you, not that you're making it happen. And I think so many people make that mistake, is they think, I'm just going to bring them in the house because I've got them on the leash right now and I don't need to do anything. But we have to do something. We have to rise to the occasion all the time, especially when we're trying to fix a problem like this. We have to become almost dog trainers, but not really. You just have to be fun. You have to be engaging, and you got to think about the fact that dogs are they want to have fun all the time. I mean, that's even up until they're 14, 15 years old. They have that puppy nature to them. And so if you're not supplying that fun, then they will look elsewhere. Sometimes things are beyond our funness, like Bronin's, having fun with the snow. And in that case, what do you do? Well, if you didn't have a drag line on, then you kind of just got to wait until he comes to you. You can't keep calling a dog and have them keep not responding. If you have a dog that has a real history of not coming when called, it's best to, when you start practicing and learning some new things, to put a new word on it. So I use the word come when I'm calling my dog, but if I started to, hopefully this never happens, but if I started to lose my recall again with Batman, I would retrain him to a different word, like here or now, okay? Because that word may be poisoned, okay? And that's him chewing on a bone that you can hear him now. So you just want to be cautious of repeating dog come, and not having them respond to you. Does anybody have a problem with their dogs coming when called inside the house? Is there any, okay, same?
Oh, yeah.
Harness, right?
Game around the table.
Yeah, and that's about his harness, I know that from working with you. What about,
Once we catch him, we'll put the gentle leader on it.
yep,
It's almost like he's ashamed and he just goes over and lays down.
yeah, but that's the gentle leader. So what were you going to say with Gracie?
No, she just, it's on her time.
But what are you trying to do with her inside the house?
It's bedtime, it's time to go to bed.
Okay, does she go in her crate?
No, she sleeps with me.
She sleeps with you. So what do you think she's avoiding?
She waits when I say come, let's go to bed. She waits until I get halfway up the stairs and then she comes.
So she wants it on her terms as well.
On her turn.
Okay. So how many nights do you say to her, Gracie, come, and go through that whole process? Every night. So we need to not do that. Okay? Because, again, what is she learning? We have to be really careful about what our dogs are learning. They're really smart. They do what works for them. Some dogs are more biddable than others, and they're willing to kind of go the extra mile for us. But frequently, a lot of times girl dogs can be a little tougher, I'll be honest. And again, it's from my own experience, but experience of many other dog trainers that I know and work with and are friends with and do agility with. Boy dogs usually are more biddable. Bronin, he's a little exception. He isn't quite that way at this point, but he will be.
He's better with me, with his knee than he is
With Bill? Okay. Yeah, so if you spend a lot of time with whoever spends the most time training their dog, like I know that my dogs listen more to me than they do to Wayne, there's no question. But I'm the one who spends all that time with them and training and everything. So with Gracie, let's get her a 6-foot drag line or something. Then I want you to put it on her collar. Does she have a collar on at night?
Yeah.
Before she goes to bed, I mean? Yeah, so about, I don't know, an hour before bedtime, I want you to just put a drag line. And a drag line is a light leash that, and inside the house, really 6 feet is plenty. I wouldn't want it to be any longer than that. Cut the loop off and put that on her. And then when it's time to go to bed, I want you to go over and just say, let's go. Pick up the line and just say, let's go, we're going to bed. But I want you to give her cheese all the way up the stairs. Okay? So that, I don't, but you can just get a cheap leash anywhere. Yeah. So a 6-foot leash, cut the loop off, it'll be about 5 feet or so, and then that's plenty of length. But you're not going to call her, understand. You're going to just pick up the leash and say, let's go, we're going to bed, good girl, and just walk up the stairs with her. So anytime you're using a drag line, you don't want to say come. This isn't about practicing recall when we're doing a drag line. This is about you just being able to have control of that situation and then also making it pay well to the dog. All right, I don't know why, I think it's like a little, I don't know how often she does, I know she does that every night with the going to bed thing, but there must be other times during the day that she does.
Well, we're at the dog park, sometimes she listens, sometimes she doesn't.
Mhm.
It really, like I said, it all depends on her mood and what she wants to do.
Right.
Very stubborn.
But if she's playing with another dog and having fun, that's another example that I was expecting to come out tonight, because dogs can provide more fun sometimes than we can. Okay? And, you know, I really, again, have limited his playtime with dogs so much because I don't want him thinking about other dogs. I want him thinking about me. But that's not the normal person. You know, like I'm not normal. I do agility and I've been doing it for 20 years, and I know what the demands of being in the ring are and not having food, and so I'm preparing for that. When you have a dog like yours that is, primarily a pet dog, I mean, my dogs are pet dogs too, but you don't have those aspirations. But if she always gets to go and play with other dogs at the dog park, and that's her form of having fun, then she will look at you as not as fun. You know, they have to have a desire to please, or a desire to come to you. And it's not about pleasing you in the beginning. It might be later, but right now it's about pleasing Gracie. Okay? How can we make it so that Gracie finds you to be more fun to be with than other dogs? So when you do go to the dog park, I don't know how often you go.
She goes to daycare once a week. We haven't gone to the dog park in a little while because of the weather.
Good. I think that I would leave her fun with other dogs at daycare. And I would do more taking her for walks, taking her to new places, taking her to Smithland Supply, taking her to Tractor Supply, walking around with her, having treats, having a good time.
Okay.
Having her, does she like food? Okay, so I mean, if your dog is food motivated, you're in good shape for any of this stuff. But we have to try to be a little bit more to our dogs than just the taxi service to the dog park.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, so any questions so far on any of that? Yes.
You had said something about the drag line being only for like retrieving them,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been putting it on Henry, letting him go out to go to the bathroom in the
Yep.
fenced area, and then I'll still call him
Mhm.
come in. He'll come, like I said, around 8-10 of the time at this point, the first time. If he doesn't come the first time, then I walk and get it.
Okay.
I'm wondering if that's still a good use of it or not.
I think for a little while, sorry to cut you off, but I think I know where you're going with this. I think for a while what I would do is I would just not call him. I would go out and get him every time. As much of a pain in the butt it is right now to do that, especially on a day like today or a night like tonight, it's an investment. Just keep thinking investment into your future with your dog and your dog's recall. Does that make sense? Yeah. I know it's a pain.
And then the other question was about, you said that a lot of dogs do better when they're off leash, not in their own yard, things like that. I haven't tried that yet with him. I have a little bit just in our backyard that's not the fenced part,
Yep.
and I think I found that to be true.
Yeah.
I still keep the drag line on him, and I'll mostly hold the leash, and then sometimes I'll drop it, and he knows I've dropped it, and he can kind of
Feel that you're not there anymore.
I'll back and see if it works.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, I'll pick it up.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that.
I'm wondering, like, do you recommend practicing outside of the comfort zone of the yard
Mm-hmm.
when they're not doing recall consistently in the yard?
The reason why it works more when they're out of the yard is because they are thankfully being dependent on you out of the yard. In the yard, they know exactly where you are. They know exactly where the boundaries are. Out of the yard, they don't know that, and I'm not saying like everybody go and take their dogs off leash and see what happens. I'm not saying to do that at all, but most of the time dogs are better off their property than they are on their property when it comes to recall because they're depending on you. There are some breeds that I would not ever, like beagles, huskies, they have to be started at 8 or 9 weeks old in order to have a good recall. If somebody came to me with a 2-year-old husky and wanted to teach it to come when called, I'd say, you're crazy. No, I wouldn't say that. But I would say, let's work on it. Let's do our best. But it's really difficult. They're so high prey drive. And beagles have such a strong smell drive, such a strong nose drive that they literally won't hear you. Their nose will go to the ground and then they'll just go. So those 2 breeds are the hardest of all the breeds. Everything else just falls into this pile. The other thing that can be difficult, like Lorraine's got probably, I don't know, and Luna's, but you had Luna since she was how old? 5 or 6 months. So she might have still had a little bit of history before you got her, and that's the other thing to keep in mind is what is their history? And that includes history with you as terms of coming when called. But Lorraine has a dog that she got when she was 2 or something, 3. So her dog has had a history long before Lorraine had her as to what may or may not have happened. And I don't mean abuse or anything like that. I'm just talking about, did she take off on her owners? She is super protective. So, how many times has she kind of gotten loose, so to speak, and then came back when she was ready? And when that happens, then again, your dog unfortunately has built up a history of, not coming when called. But that history can happen with anybody's dog. Anybody's dog that is just not realized, like when we were talking about Gracie, just not realize the reinforcement that they've gotten away from you. So we have to try to be the most reinforcing thing on our dog's planet. And I really try to be that with my dogs. They still believe that I'm in charge, but I do provide a lot of good stuff for them, a lot of fun and entertainment but it's I also am entertained by them, and I sincerely find them to be funny, and I sincerely talk to them, and so that's where I want to help you get to that part where your relationship, where you feel like you trust each other, because that really is mutual respect and trust when you have a dog. They have to believe you. And the only way they're going to believe you is if you give them a reason to believe you, that you are the fun one. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. All right. So the other thing that I think people don't really realize is that dogs need to be taught to come when called, just like teaching sit and teaching down and any of our behaviors. We would never go out to a busy location and try to teach a dog to sit or lay down for the first time, especially lay down. They would be like, what? I can't do this right now. What's over here? What's over here? You teach it in the quietness of your house, and then you start to later generalize the behavior, add distractions. Recall is the exact same thing. There are so many distractions in the world. We have to try to plan, like Batman's distraction with whatever when we were up in the woods. I think it was, one time a bunch of turkeys flew out of the trees, and he was like going from a tree to tree to tree to tree, like, is it over here? Is it over here? He had no idea what was going on, but I had no control over his choices, and it was terrifying. It really was. So I understand that whole loss of control thing. But we have to teach recall in a quiet place. And how is that going to relate to next week? Well, the way it's going to relate is that hopefully I'm going to give you enough things to practice, and then when they come next week, of course, they're all going to be excited. I'm going to get creative with the class so that we can all make sure that we're getting enough turns and doing things and stuff. But ultimately, your goal is for your dog, almost the entire time they're here in class, that they won't be watching, looking at the other dogs working. And so that's going to it's going to mean a few things. For some of you, it's going to mean like vigilant, like Lorraine is extremely vigilant with Penny. He just could become such a good dog trainer. She's always watching the environment. She's always making sure that there isn't something that's going to get Penny going. And some of you rely on your dogs chewing while you're waiting for your turn. That's totally fine as long as they are facing you and not facing what's going on out here. But I would like you to try to also be aware of when your dog gives you attention. So when you're working with your dog in class, and if you are a person who likes to give a bully stick for them to chew on, I want you to try to also take the stick away at some point and just try to reinforce your dog for giving you attention. Right? Give anything, a look in your direction, okay? And I like to mark behaviors with either a yes word or a clicker, which I'm not going to tell you to use a clicker, but yes works just fine. So if my dog gives me like when I take him out and I do some stuff with him, when he gives me what I'm hoping for or close to it, I'm going to mark that behavior with the word yes. So one of the things I'm going to do with him is hand touch. And when he does it, I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to reinforce. If while you were sitting there right now, and if your dogs were all with you right now, and they were looking up at you and giving you a bunch of attention, wouldn't that be great? Right? And that all relates to recall, because that means that even in high drive situations, you are the one who means so much to them. Why? A lot of times it is because of the food. You know, dogs are not born to please us. We would love to think that, but it is not true. Okay? The only way our dogs decide to please us is when it pleases them. And that can be food, that can be a game of tug, that can be, just about anything that your dog enjoys as long as it's interactive with you. So if you're all sitting there right now with your dogs and they just looked in your direction, I would say yes, and I would treat that situation. You can say it very quietly. Yes. Yes. Okay? And what you're going to find, the more you do that, the more your dogs are going to look at you. Okay? The more they're going to give you attention in difficult situations, difficult meaning, exciting in their opinion. So one of the things that I really want you to get good at is capturing good behavior. Okay? Because when it is captured and not forced or lured, you're going to get, and it's captured and rewarded, you're going to get more of it. Okay? So we'll do some work with that as well. All right. There was something else that I wanted to talk about before I take him out and do a couple things. One of the things that helps people train dogs best is if they understand what drives their dog. So again, some dogs are food driven, some dogs are not as food driven, but regardless, there's a few drives that dogs have. And I think it's important when you get in a situation, that you recognize which drive your dog is in. Play drive would be a lot of times our dogs are in play drive, but a good specific example would be Bronin. He was in play drive that day with the snow. And so how do we get him out of play drive? You get a toy. You know, you get a toy and you say, look what I have, you know, and you move it around on the ground. The squeaker toys work great, or just having a squeaker that's inside a toy, you know, so if he's not focusing and you can squeak and then run in the other direction. So he takes a look at you and hears the squeaker and you start running in the other direction, chances are he would have come with you that day because he was in play drive. And what we were doing when we squeak the toy and run away is prey drive. Okay? Prey drive is what Batman was in that day with the turkeys in the woods. He was totally in prey drive. It was hard to get him out of prey drive in that moment. I didn't really have any. I had no tools. I had nothing. The food didn't work. So prey drive can sometimes be and that's back to the husky, by the way. Huskies have such a strong prey drive, it's very difficult to get to that point, okay? If a dog is chasing another dog, which is probably the scariest thing ever, that's prey drive, okay? And again, we don't want to find ourselves in those situations because you're not going to get a dog out of prey drive, all right? They're gonna stay in it. And so that's the toughest one. Social drive is the kinds of things that I'm going to do with Batman, you know, playing with toys. It's going to be play drive, but it's also going to be a bit of social drive because it's going to be not just about him, but about the two of us together. Food drive is where we want our dogs to be able to be all the time. So when you come to class, you're hoping, and most of the time, you have a food drive dog, most of the time. And I do as well when I'm in class with Batman, although his toy drive is a lot stronger. Toy drive is play drive, okay? So what I wanted to kind of just go over with you are a few of the things that we need to work on in order to build a much, much better recall in our dog. And some of these things you've heard before. Name game. How many people still play that? I want to see everybody's hand go up. I know it may not be where you are right now, but this is what we need. We need our dogs to have a name that they will turn and look at you when they hear. Okay, so if your dog won't look at you when you say his name, you are not going to get your dog to come to you without question. Sometimes you're not anyways, like if it's Marty, you know, being protective and doing what Marty does sometimes, whether we have a name or not, we might not get him, but for sure, if he doesn't have a strong response to his name, we're not going to get him out of that situation. So that's where we start, is working on name, they look at you, treat. Name, they look at you, treat. That goes back to basic manners week 1. And puppy, a couple of rounds of puppy classes probably. There's times that I'll do it in different puppy classes, but that's where we have to really start. So you can test out your dog's name a little bit before you start, but I'll bet you that they all can make improvement in that department. So just like I was saying with a recall, you don't practice their name in a distracting situation. You don't practice it when they're barking at another dog walking by. Okay, that is not a time to say my dog's name if he's really engaged. In fact, who came in first and Batman was shocked and started barking? Was it? Okay, so saying Batman at that point, fruitless. I just had to contain him. I just had to get him in his crate, get him back to me, not physically, but mentally. And then he was fine, okay? But if I was saying, Batman, no, Batman, stop, Batman, not a good idea. So you have to measure and make sure that you're not using your dog's name at the wrong time. If they're very engaged in a behavior that you don't like, not the time to use their name. But the equally important is practicing their name at times when you know you have them mentally, because you have to have a measure of success when things are, are quiet before you could ever expect them to respond in a situation. And sometimes you still don't use it. Like in that situation, if it was any other dog besides him, Seb would do the same thing. I would never use my dog's name when they're acting all protective and stuff like that. Not gonna work. Okay, and like Marty that day that you talked about. Okay, so name is numero uno. Collar grab. Back to basic manners. How many people can actually take their dog's collar without them trying to back away? Yeah? Good. Excellent. So we want to, though, keep working on that. And there is the way that I showed you in class, and then there's another way that I'm working on with Batman that I'll show you today as well, that we can start working on. That, by the way, that other way is a time when I would use the word yes. Were you going to ask a question? No. Okay. On-leash recalls. How many people walk their dogs on a leash? So do you ever practice recall on leash? Yes? If not, that's something that you need to start. And you know what? I know how tiring it is to train sometimes when you're just exhausted. And so that's not like, you get home at the end of the day and you're exhausted and you got to take your dog for a walk. That's already sometimes exhausting. So that may not be the time to do it. All right. But on your more relaxed walks, make part of your walk training. Don't just make it all about you decompressing. I would love to be able to decompress all the time when I walk my dogs, but sometimes it's just not about that. You have to be aware of the surroundings and try to catch them when things are going to work. So when your dog is out for a walk and you've got, a regular 6-foot leash and they're sniffing and you feel like you want to get a recall out of that moment, try it. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're not going to respond. You've got them on a leash, so you can still kind of edge them along if need be. But I don't want it to be like years ago when I started dog training, it was very coercive. I didn't really, but where I went to school for dog training, it was very do it or else kind of training, leash corrections and, forced recalls. And, I don't want it to be that, but at the same time, when they're out on a leash and they're not responding, you can at least guide them, right? Get them going. So dog come. Say it a second time, and then because they're going to come because they're on a leash, right? And so as they're coming along, act like they're giving you $1 million. Good boy. That's awesome. Thank you for coming to me. All right, be sincere about it. Does anybody use flexi leashes? Don't be afraid to answer if you do. Because I'm not going to pick on you about it at all. Flexi leashes are, they can be really dangerous if you don't know how to use them, and many people don't. But if you do know how to use it, it's actually a great tool for practicing recall. And again, I usually tell people, like, if you have a flexi leash, carry it in a pack or something. And when you get to a field where you want to give your dog more space to move and practice recalls, that's a great time to use a flexi leash. But, out in the busy area, or when I used to have a dog daycare here and people would come in on a flexi leash, I was not happy. I just would tell them that they can't come in on that, because we don't want them to just that's not the point. But if you are willing to use one if you want to practice longer recalls, that's a great way to do it because of the recoil feature. But I'm not telling you to use one. I'm not telling you not to use one. I'm just saying, they can be great tools. You just got to use them safely. Recall games, which is similar to name game. The recall games are the ones where, one of the recall games, and I have a handout for you that's got some other things in it too, but is the one where you throw the treat and your dog goes and gets it, and then you call them back to you, and as they come back to you, you know, take their collar and you give them another treat. Anybody playing that game still? No? Okay. Not enough hands went up on that one. That's really, really important. We have to stop our dogs from getting reinforcement from the environment so that they're not coming to us, and improve their recall. And so by doing that, sending them away, calling them back thing, what you're doing is you're making a conditioned response. Dogs are not conditioned to come back. That is just the bottom line. They are not. So we have to build that. So I really want you to practice this week the recall games. Okay? I want you, and this is all in your handout. I want you to practice your name game. I want you to try on-leash recalls. I want you to try the recall games. I'm going to show you another way of doing collar grab with Batman if he's cooperative. And next week, I'm going to show you attention exercises. I'm not going to do it tonight. I tried to do it a little bit before you came tonight with Batman to see if I could show you, but he's got so many tricks that he does that he's offering all these things, and I just was like, all right, I'll work on this one another time. But I'll show it to you next week. I can show you with one of your dogs. It's so quick. The good thing about attention exercises is that we're teaching our dogs to give us attention. The more we get them to offer attention, the more we're going to get that from them under duress. So I'm going to get him out in a second, but does anybody have any questions, because I used up that hour so fast, on anything that you want to ask about? Nada? So everybody's got their plan? Hello? All right. You did really well in here, buddy. You did. So, I don't have him on a leash or anything. And this is, I guess, just an example of, I mean, he has options right now. Obviously, he could go and check all of you out. And if there were other dogs, he probably would want to go and check you out. Oh, actually, this is perfect. Let me just see how good his recall is. Batman, come. Yes, that's awesome. What a good boy. Nicely done. Good. You even surprised me on that one. Good job. But did you see, like, he started running back to me before he even knew what he was doing? Did you notice that? Like, he was like, oh my gosh, what? I'm coming. Why am I coming to you? I don't know. Hopefully you have something good for me. Okay, so that's a conditioned response. That is like a reflex that I've built into him, at least in that moment. It doesn't mean it's going to work every time, but you know, that is what I strive for, is to just make my dog feel like being with me is better than anything in the world. And then when he came to me, I did take his collar in that way that we talk about in the basic manners class. Can you just make sure that that's facing? I think it is, but I just want to make sure that he's in this. Is he? Okay. So there's that way, which is to have your treat, get your dog's collar, give a treat, and then release. Treat, I take his collar, I give a treat, and then I release. So what I'm trying to do is to obviously make him feel like me taking his collar is a good thing. Another thing that I have been doing with him is trying to get him to, can you zip that up for me, because I don't want him to grab his phone. So it's just teaching him to come in and give me his collar. So my word is collar, collar, collar. Good. And whenever I'm doing something that I'm asking them to give me an action, I send the treat out so that it keeps him moving. Collar. Good job. Now I'm saying good job. What I should be saying is yes, because that's what I told you to say. So color, yes. Send the treat away, good boy, color. He says, Mom, your hand's got roast beef all over them, good boy. All right, so that is another way that we're gonna work on collar grab, and I'll talk about that, or I guess I can briefly just tell you that when you are working with your dog, if you want to build this, actually start from sitting in a chair, and you just kind of wiggle your fingers around. They usually come and check out your fingers, and you mark it with the word yes. So if he didn't know this, yes. Toss the treat away. Wiggle the fingers. And that's why sitting in a chair would be better, because I'm lower. Yes. Throw it away. And, would I want you to do this when there's anything else going on? Absolutely not. But this is just teaching that coming in, you give me your collar. Make it his responsibility. But I wouldn't do it when Bronen's playing in a snowbank, right? So you do it quietly in a quiet place. What else did I say I was going to show with him? Is that it, actually? I guess that was it. Yeah, go ahead. Hi.
How long do you work with your dog one time? Because if you're doing that, that's
Could you grab it? Oh,
that's like too much.
say that again.
How long do you work with your dogs at one time? If you treat every time, that could end up being a lot.
So you try to quit when your dog is having fun. You try to quit on a good note. So there is no answer for like all the dogs in the room. You get to know your own dog, and where they are. When they're done, you want to quit before they're done. Okay. So this is the toy drive, and his toy drive is much higher than his food drive. So I can also do the collar grab with the toy. Out, out, good boy. Yes, free, good. So I can use the toy just like I use the food for him. Not all dogs are, like Penny. She wouldn't have this toy drive. Nope, because again, it was that late adoption. She never learned to play with toys. He's been playing with toys since I took him home at 7 weeks. And he has a lot of natural toy drive anyways. The whole litter is like this. Okay, out. Good. But I want to have that same cooperation where I can say out and he drops it immediately, or most of the time immediately. I also don't want him to take it if I didn't offer it to him. So I want to be able to do all this. Take. Yes. Good boy. And then I want him to drop it when I tell him to. Out. That's awesome. What a good boy. Free. Yes.
I'm wondering about the collar grab, is that like I just don't know how I would teach that separately from just the recall, is it only when they're near you?
For which one? The one I just showed you?
Are you asking
Okay, out.
himself in a certain way, like almost like heel position, like what's the actual ask? Is it just to walk up to you and offer?
So at first, whenever you're teaching something, you don't want to use a word. So it's like that, just this motion. Usually what happens is dogs, they come in and they check out, they think you have a treat. So it's dogs' first intuition is to come and check out something with their nose. So if I go like this, it's like, oh, what do you got? So that's where it starts. But do start in a chair, because now you're nice and low and they can come right in, and you don't ask for like the one question. Let me just put him back so I don't have to pay attention to where he is. Come here, bub. Good boy, great. Get in there. Good job. So I don't want to just plan for my end behavior when I'm teaching collar. I don't want that first time for me to actually take their collar. I want them to just come and check out my fingers. What I got? What I got right here, right here, right here. And they come and they check it out. Yes, and you throw the treat away. And then you do it again. Yes, and you throw the treat away.
The purpose of that, though.
Of the collar grab?
Yeah.
Well, because some dogs don't want to go back on a leash. And my example for that with him would be doing agility. I want him to come right in and go right back on a leash. I don't want him to say, oh, but I want to go do 5 more obstacles. So it's a cooperation. That's the collar grab. In that way, it's just cooperating. He's cooperating with me. Is he doing it to please me? Heck no. Okay, he's doing it for the stake and maybe a little bit of the fun as well, of just entertaining each other. Does that make sense? Okay, so I don't know if I covered everything I wanted to cover, but I hope that this was informative. Next week when you come, obviously, really, really awesome treats. Hungry dog. Be prepared for the fact that there's all these dogs that are going to be here, right? And you know, I always take lots of strides to set up for success and all of that, but you're still going to have your work cut out for you in terms of trying to keep your dogs focused on you and not the other dogs. But I think it's going to be a good group of dogs and people. So, any questions at all? All right, so I'm going to have Sheila end that recording, and we have